You planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. And I said, well, why in the world would I have done that? And they said, you did this for purposes of spiritual growth.
Rob Schwartz is a hypnotist, past life regressionist, and author of multiple books, including Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift. In this episode, we explore why we planned our biggest challenges before we were even born.
It's what I refer to as a learning through opposites life plan. You choose to experience the exact opposite of what you are and what you want to learn, because the experience of the contrast instills a deep, deep understanding, an experiential understanding of what love with a capital L really is. In other words, if you chose just to remain in the non-physical, never come into body, never experience a life challenge, there's no contrast to teach you what love is or is not. That kind of contrast doesn't exist in the non-physical realm, but we have it here on Earth in abundance.
Rob's research reveals that we are the directors and lead actors of our lives.
Service to others is the second half of everybody's pre-birth plan. The first half is, what are the lessons that you chose to learn? The second half is, what are you going to do with what you've learned? And this component of service to others is something that I have seen in literally every single pre-birth plan I've ever looked at. It's always there in one form or another, to one degree or another. We always plan to take what we hope we will learn and offer it to humanity in some form of service.
If our lives are planned, is there a way to minimize any suffering that may come through lessons?
The most simple way to do that, not the easiest, but the most simple, is again to ask yourself, what would love with a capital L do now? Anytime you have to make a decision, and just do whatever that is. That alone will take care of it. Anything that you enjoy, that will raise your vibration. Anything that interests you will raise your vibration. There are 1,000,001 ways you can raise your vibration. If you feel good, then you are raising your vibration. If you feel bad, you are lowering your vibration. It's really very simple.
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Hey Rob, how are you?
I'm well, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about pre-birth planning and souls and so many of the cool topics that you've spent really decades learning about, discovering, and exploring. And maybe to start this off, how did this all get on your radar?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I come from the corporate world. I actually have an MBA. And for many years, until I was 40 years old, which was longer ago than I cared to admit, I was in the corporate world doing marketing and communications. And I did not enjoy that at all. It was actually profoundly unfulfilling. And all the time that I was doing this, I had this nagging sensation, a knowing actually, that I was supposed to be doing something else. I had some other purpose that I had come to Earth to fulfill, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't even know how to figure out what it was. And then in 2003, the universe basically staged an intervention. And three things happened within a matter of weeks that completely redirected me. One was, I did it my first session ever with a psychic medium. And she channeled my spirit guides. I didn't even know what a spirit guide was. She had to explain that to me. But then she channeled them, and they said to me, you planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. And I said, well, why in the world would I have done that? And they said, you did this for purposes of spiritual growth. Now, coming from an MBA background, being in the corporate world for a long time, I probably would have dismissed all of this as some kind of delusion on my part. But then the spirit guides launched into this lengthy monologue in which they went through my challenges one by one and told me why I had planned them. Now you have to understand, I hadn't told the medium anything about myself.
And what made you go see this medium, if you don't mind me asking? Doesn't seem like a fits into the corporate marketing picture here.
It was really an existential crisis. I knew that I was not supposed to be in the corporate world. I knew that I was supposed to be doing something else, something quite specific, but I didn't know what it was. And so, my first steps to resolve that existential dilemma were very conventional in nature. I took the Myers-Briggs inventory, which was an interesting exercise. It gave me some insight, but it didn't tell me what to do with my life. And then I went to all my friends and family and I said, I'm really unhappy doing this corporate work. I feel like I should be doing something else. I don't know what it is. What do you think I should be doing? And nobody had any idea. I mean, nobody can answer that question for you, of course. So that didn't help. And then I thought, well, there's got to be something I can do to gain insight into why I'm here on planet Earth. What's an out of the box solution that might yield that insight? And an idea came to me: go see a psychic medium, which is not part of my background. I did not believe in mediumship at the time, but frankly, I was desperate. And I thought, why not? It's just an hour of my time. If nothing comes of it, no harm done. And it ended up being life changing because my guides went through my challenges one by one. They told me in detail why I had planned them. And they did all of this without me sharing anything about myself with them. So it blew my mind and my world wide open. And then within a short time of that, I was introduced to a woman who has the ability to go into trance, to self hypnotize basically, and channel her soul. And I spent about 15 hours talking with her soul about how we plan our lives before we come into body. And her soul just laid it all out. Here's how it's done. Here's why it's done. Here's how it works. And that formed the foundation of your soul's plan. And then the most impactful thing of all, I had an experience in which I was just taking a break from work. I was walking down the sidewalk in the middle of a weekday afternoon. And I had this experience in which all of a sudden I felt overwhelming unconditional love for every person I saw. And this was not a human kind of love. This was a divine love, a transcendent love. It was so powerful, so pure, so sweet, so strong. I can't even begin to find words for it. And as this was happening, you could say that I was caused to know. I was caused to know by a power much greater than my own that we are love. Each one of us is literally this love, the capital L. We are made from it. We are here to express it. That knowing was given to me. And the combination of these three experiences changed everything. I left the corporate world. I embarked on the path that led to Your Soul's Plan and the other two books. And it led to a completely different and much more fulfilling life than I have now.
Sounds like an amazing inflection point, that's for sure. And I want to dig into this whole "we are love" thing because it's a nice idea, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, I love that idea. I'm love." Like, who doesn't like that idea? But oh, by the way, I'm sick. Things aren't working out. My career sucks. I'm getting a divorce. Whatever it is, like we have these challenges come up that seem to be the antithesis of love. And so, how do you explain that? And how do these guides that you spoke to explain that?
It's what I refer to as a learning through opposites life plan. You choose to experience the exact opposite of what you are and what you want to learn, because the experience of the contrast instills a deep, deep understanding, an experiential understanding of what love with a capital L really is. In other words, if you chose just to remain in the non physical, never come into body, never experience a life challenge, there's no contrast to teach you what love is or is not. That kind of contrast doesn't exist in the non physical realm, but we have it here on earth in abundance. And that's why souls are lining up in eternity to come here and come into body. That experience of contrast, learning through opposites, teaches you what love really is.
And so, what do you believe then Earth is really about?
I believe it's about expansion and evolution, which is really just another way of saying love with a capital L. People always ask me, Why would I have planned such and such a hardship? How should I respond to it? And I always say, keep it simple. Ask yourself, what would love with a capital L do now? And whatever the answer to that question is, do that. And just keep doing it again and again and again and again, as much as you can, as best as you can, for the rest of this lifetime and any other lifetime you choose to have on earth. You came here to experience and know yourself as love and to expand your ability to give and receive love. That's what the contrast really ignites.
And I imagine a lot of people hear this and they're like, okay, so I came in to experience all this hard shit so that I could come back to love, and it's all been pre planned. Where does the concept of free will come into this dynamic that we have set up, apparently?
Yeah, so this is a very important point. When we talk about having a pre birth plan, you don't have just one, you have many. It's like a quantum pre birth planning. So, my wife is a channel. She channels a collective or a group consciousness that we affectionately call the beings of light, or BOL. And here's how the BOL explain pre birth planning to us. They say, imagine that you have a stack of sheets of paper in front of you. Everybody has their own stack. Each sheet is a complete set of pre birth plans. The sheets at the top, those are the highest vibrational pre birth plans. That's where the learning is done through love, peace, and joy. Sheets at the bottom are the lowest vibrational pre birth plans. That's where it's done through pain and suffering. Your free will comes in determining which sheet you're on in your particular stack of sheets of paper. So, to the extent that you make loving decisions, you move up in the stack and you activate a higher vibrational pre birth plan. If you make fear based decisions, you move down, you bring more pain and suffering into your life. But that decision is a free will decision. It's totally up to you. Are you going to act based on fear, or are you going to act based on love? You always have free will.
And it seems like I'm curious about your opinions of the nature of reality, right? Because there seems to be this dynamic force that is surfacing the opposites, right, that we need, and is adjusting based on the choices that we make. And so, what have you learned about that, and how there's like some type of orchestration happening?
Well, I think this feeds into the notion of ascension. So let's talk about that. Ascension is literally the ascending in vibration or frequency of planet Earth and everybody who's in a body on planet Earth. And we are going through an ascension process right now. Ascension is caused by light from source, from God, flooding the planet. The light has the effect of bringing to conscious awareness everything unlike itself, which is to say, everything of a lower vibration. That has to happen for ascension to take place, because all of the lower vibrational energies like fear have to be cleared. And in order to clear them, you have to see them consciously first. So this is a process known as purification. It's going on all around the planet. And it has the effect of making it look like things are getting worse. And in fact, they actually are in the short run. All the darkness is being brought into the light so that we can choose to move in another direction. Now, a lot of people feel despair, they feel hopeless, they think that things are beyond repair. That is not my understanding at all. Things look worse because that's how it has to be in order for them to get dramatically, dramatically better. And that's what the ascension is eventually going to lead to, and a lot faster than people think. It's just a matter of a number of years now until things get dramatically better.
Would another way to look at that is that many of these things have always been there, but they just yet haven't been in the light, and so that makes the appearance of it actually looking worse.
I completely agree with that. These things have been in place for eons of time. And people have been in this endless loop of reincarnating again and again, trying to master the same lessons and repeatedly making fear based decisions. And so there's an intervention of sorts going on in which the universe is giving us a hand up to do something that we have not been able to do before. Those lower vibrational energies, that darkness has been there a long, long time, but it's finally getting cleared.
And so we have these things we're supposed to learn, right? Which is kind of coming back to this capital L. I think there's been some consistent themes that you have seen in your work. I believe there was 28 divine virtues. Could you talk about that and how that works?
So, as background here, I should explain that one of the things I did when I researched my three books and looked at people's pre-birth plans and why they plan big challenges, I went into people's pre-birth planning sessions with the assistance of mediums and channels and actually heard the conversations that took place when they planned their biggest challenges. And something I noticed over a period of time.
Can we pause on this? I just want to make a quick clarification. So you were in listening to these sessions, and these people were basically getting the information from their pre-birth plan, or like in a liminal space. Could you talk about what was specifically happening to that person that you were listening in on?
Yeah, so the session consists, the ones that I'm thinking of right now consist of three people: me, the person I'm interviewing for the book about a particular challenge, and the medium who is retrieving the words that were spoken in the pre-birth planning session. So in that session, typically spirit guides come in, loved ones come in, the significant people who will be in the incarnation. And they talk about, what do we want to learn in this upcoming lifetime? And then once those broad intentions are put in place, they talk about, what do we need to do and not do in order to learn those lessons? So people are talking to their future parents, their future children, siblings, employers, friends, romantic partners, enemies, if they're planning to have enemies. And they're talking about the roles they're going to play for each other. So essentially, everybody is their own playwright. You're creating this script, and you are the lead actor or actress. You are the director. You are the producer. You are the screenwriter. You put all of these details in place in your pre-birth planning session. That's basically how it works. So when I listened to these sessions, when people were planning really, really hard challenges, they were talking about how they wanted to cultivate certain virtues, qualities that are important to the soul. And I call those divine virtues. Over a period of years, I put together a list of the ones that came up the most. It's things like compassion, unconditional love, faith, patience, empathy, trust, and so on. The average person is working on two or three. Occasionally, somebody's working on four or five. As far as I know, nobody is ever working on more than five. It would be too much to take on in any incarnation. And from the pre-birth planning perspective, you view your challenges as providing both the opportunity and the motivation to cultivate the virtues. So, to take a very common example, let's say that somebody wants to cultivate compassion. If that is your pre-birth intention, you would be very likely to do something like plan to be in a nuclear family that will treat you with a profound lack of compassion. And you will actually request that from your future parents, siblings, and others in your environment. Again, the reason for doing that is intended to drive you within, where you hope that you will first cultivate self compassion and then take the compassion you've cultivated for self and turn it outward in service to others. The lack of compassion in the environment is intended to drive you within, so you cultivate self compassion and then later take it and use it in service to humanity. That's a very common pre birth plan.
Yeah, it seems there's a pattern there where it's something redirecting us inward, us healing, and then us expressing it outward and into service of the lesson that we learned.
Yeah, service to others is the second half of everybody's pre birth plan. The first half is, what are the lessons that you chose to learn? The second half is, what are you going to do with what you've learned? And this component of service to others is something that I have seen in literally every single pre birth plan I've ever looked at. It's always there in one form or another, to one degree or another. We always plan to take what we hope we will learn and offer it to humanity in some form of service.
Were there specific events I'm just thinking of people that are listening to this and they're like, how do we know this isn't imagination? How can we trust these random mediums? Maybe they have this story, right? That pre-birth plans exist. What were the things that happened that gave you lots of conviction that this is just how it is?
Well, the first thing is that spiritually transformative experience I shared with you, where I was walking down the street and had that experience of unconditional love for every person I saw. So when I talk about love with a capital L, I actually had that experience, and I experienced myself as that love. And I knew that everybody is that love. It was a direct experiential knowing. In addition to that, I did personal sessions with all the mediums and channels who I eventually chose to work with. And I know from those sessions that they are quite gifted. The information that they were able to retrieve about me was spot on. And the others that we worked with in the book had the same experience. They would talk about how these mediums and channels were bringing through information that was deeply private and deeply personal, and they had not shared with the medium or channel in any way. And then, in addition to that, there have been other spiritually transformative experiences over the years that have confirmed to me that what I'm writing about is true. The most profound of those was a non-dual experience that I had about 2 or 3 years ago, in which I was just sitting in a lawn chair early in a morning watching the sunrise. And I had this experience in which this enormous rush of energy came down from above me, entered my body through the crown chakra, which is an energetic center in the top of the skull, filled the body, filled all the space around the body. And I knew intuitively that this was the energy of my soul or my higher self. This energy was so powerful, so strong, and so deeply, deeply still. This was a stillness that is otherworldly, and it was a power that is otherworldly. Now, I say otherworldly to emphasize how intense the stillness and power were, but they were mine. I was this stillness, the stillness was me. I was that power, the power is me. And this experience went on for about 3 hours. As it was happening, there were two knowings that were given to me. One is that all is well always, no matter how it may appear otherwise on the surface. And the other is that I am inviolable. Nothing can harm me. And when I say I mean all of us. We are all this stillness, this power, this inviolable energy. So again, a direct experiential knowing. It's not just because a medium or channel told me something. It's because of these experiences that I know what I know.
It's amazing, man. I definitely got some some chills as I heard you talking, and yeah, who knows? Maybe my soul will jump into my body later. That would be pretty cool. I think there's a lot of people that are listening to this and they're on their path, and they're like, okay, I get it. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow. I'm here to evolve. But that higher deck that you described, where less hard shit has to happen, that sounds pretty good. What do I need to do, or is there anything that I can do to spend more time there than in some of these kind of more difficult situations?
So again, it's all a matter of vibration or frequency. You move up in your stack of sheets of paper when you raise your vibration. The most simple way to do that, not the easiest, but the most simple, is again to ask yourself, what would love with a capital L do now? Anytime you have to make a decision, and just do whatever that is. That alone will take care of it. But there are many other ways to raise your vibration. Anything that you enjoy, that will raise your vibration. Anything that interests you will raise your vibration. Being in nature, meditation, chanting, any number of spiritual practices, kindness, gentleness, compassion, things like that, raise your vibration. There are a million and one ways you can raise your vibration. If you feel good, then you are raising your vibration. If you feel bad, you are lowering your vibration. It's really very simple.
Let's talk about bringing your whole self to work. If you're like many executives, including myself at one point, you might be living a double life. You have your personal career, and then you have your personal growth journey. Conscious Talent is changing that as the world's first executive talent firm specializing in connecting leaders and companies who embrace inner work. Imagine finding job opportunities where your contemplative practice, latest retreat experience, and commitment to your personal evolution are seen as strengths, not secrets. What if you actually felt like your career supported this aspect of your life versus competed with it? Conscious Talent is building a community of leaders and companies who are committed to both combining professional excellence with personal transformation. If you're ready to merge your two worlds with a fully aligned career, join the movement at conscioustalent.com. Here you can sign up for our talent collective to stay on top of future opportunities or find your next transformative team member. Lots of options. Talk to us about this concept of like a soul family or a group of beings that are involved in this process together.
So everybody, as I understand it, has a soul group, which is a collection of 25 to 75 individual souls who are at more or less the same vibration, the same stage of evolution. And you and the other members of your soul group have many, many incarnations together. You play every conceivable role for each other, mother and daughter, father and son, romantic partners, and so on. And you script these roles before you come into body. And again, you decide, what do we want to learn? How do we want to learn it? So over many incarnations, you'll play every role for each other. And at some point, you'll move on to a new soul group, a higher vibrational soul group. Some of your soul group will come with you. Some of them will go in another evolutionary trajectory. And this is how it's done, at least here on the earth plane.
This is really interesting, right? Because what comes up for me is there's certain people in my family and have just been a big part of my life that, don't seem like they're into consciousness at all, have done a lot of unconscious things. And I think it's easy for certain people to look at that and go, oh, well, they're less evolved souls, or like they're earlier on their soul journey, versus this idea that perhaps that was just the part that they decided to play in this lifetime in service of your own evolution. And I'm curious just what you think about like those two ideas. And yeah.
It's possible that the beings who are making less conscious decisions are less evolved, younger souls. But if they're people who are in your nuclear family, that means they're very likely to be part of your soul group. And if they're part of your soul group, they are at more or less the same evolutionary stage as you. So if it's somebody in your family or somebody else in very close proximity and relationship to you, it's likely that they are playing a role that you have scripted together by mutual agreement in order to stimulate your own healing, your own expansion, your own evolution. You have asked them to challenge you in these ways that come across as unconscious so that you can grow in the divine virtues that you want to grow in and learn any number of other lessons as well. It's all part of that pre-birth play that we create before we come into body.
I think everybody knows probably at least one person in their around them where it just seems like everything goes well and has always went well for that person. What's going on there?
That is what I refer to as a quote unquote vacation lifetime. And why would a soul plan a vacation lifetime if we're coming here for growth and challenges and so forth? Well, one reason would be that they simply have never experienced it before. So if you've had many lifetimes of suffering and hardship, you would want to have a vacation lifetime just for the experience of having a vacation lifetime. The soul wants to experience everything. The other thing that I think is often happening there is that, if you think about it, If literally every person on the planet were suffering, we would conclude that life is suffering. And that, I think, would be an unfortunate and inaccurate conclusion. So the people who are having vacation lifetimes, they're essentially saying to us, life can be like this. And that gives people hope, gives them motivation, it gives them the opportunity to ask, okay, what is that person doing that allows the vacation lifetime? And how can I move in that direction? It's intended to provide inspiration and insight and an expanded viewpoint to those who are suffering.
That's helpful. I've never heard that perspective before. And then how about people like I'm thinking of Ramana Maharshi, who at age 13 just like woke up and was completely enlightened, and that was it. And um, not to say he didn't have more experiences that maybe contributed to his evolution after that, but it didn't seem like his life contained this drawn out period of suffering while he was embodied in the early stages.
So it's my understanding that you bring with you into each lifetime all of the wisdom and all of the evolution that you've achieved in previous lifetimes. So I would have to think that Ramana Maharshi was an old soul, highly evolved, had many, many previous incarnations in which he cultivated his consciousness, he worked on divine virtues, he learned his lessons, and he brought all of that with him. He started off very highly evolved.
Got it. Yeah, that seems to track. And this is, another topic that I wanted to bring up was where this idea of karma fits in all that and how what you've learned about karma.
People think of karma as a punishment, and that is not at all my understanding. What I see in my research into pre-birth planning is that it's a sense of incompletion. So let's say, for example, that you planned before birth to cultivate compassion, and then you have a life review at the end of the incarnation, and you feel like you cultivated some compassion, but there's still a ways to go. So you have a feeling of incompletion with that lesson. That feeling of incompletion is the karma. And you will want to get to a place of completion with compassion. And so you'll plan new lifetimes and new lessons that are intended to help you continue to cultivate compassion. It's just a feeling of incompletion.
I see. So does that definition then also create space for this idea that we are actually potentially creating more karma for future lifetimes? Like, for example, is incompletion just a reframe of that idea? Is how I would see it. Like, if I came here, for example, I know you talk about Hitler as an example, and he had an intention for this life, and then he decided to go against that. So, is that mean now he has to learn the lesson even harder his next lifetime, or is incompletion what we're calling that? Maybe we could work with that example as a way to kind of explain this.
Well, every time you choose to come back into body with a new pre birth plan, uh, there is the opportunity for more incompletion. And it might be with whatever lesson you've chosen consciously to work on. It could also include new things that come up in the incarnation that perhaps you didn't foresee in your pre birth planning that now create even more of a sense of incompletion in new areas of evolution. So, with somebody like Hitler, it's my understanding that he actually planned before birth to be a great spiritual leader. That was the soul's intention. And he took the gifts the soul gave him, oratory, rhetoric, charisma, and so forth, and used those to go in a completely opposite direction. So there's a lot of karma there. Some of the karma is that he didn't complete the goal of becoming a spiritual leader. A lot of the karma is from what he actually went on to do, causing great harm to people. He's going to see that in his life review, and there will be many, many, many lifetimes of making amends in one way or another before he can get to a place of completion in regard to what happened in the Hitler lifetime.
I see. I see. So people listening are probably like, okay, I should probably figure out why the heck I'm here and maybe learn about the lessons I'm supposed to learn. What's what's that process like once people start to understand that this whole pre-birth planning thing is even a thing?
So I'm a hypnotist, and I practice something called a between lives soul regression. That is, in my opinion, by far the best way to find out what you plan for this lifetime, why you made those plans, and how you're doing and how you can do better. You can do the between lives soul regression as a private session or in a group workshop. We have one coming up on October 26th. What happens there is you talk to what is called your council of elders. And those are the beings who oversee your personal evolution. They're very, very highly evolved, very loving, totally non judgmental. When you get in front of your council in this type of hypnotic regression, I prompt the person to ask many, many questions about the life plan, how they're doing, how they can do better. And the council will answer those questions. So people will come out of those sessions with a very deep understanding of why they're here and how best to move forward to learn the planned lessons.
Yeah, it sounds like you're almost getting like a map that you didn't have before that you can then adjust your free will according to that new knowledge.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And then people will often ask, well, am I supposed to have that map? If I get this map, am I in some way interfering with my own pre birth plan? And the answer to that question is no. If you've evolved to a stage where you're hearing this interview, you're finding out that there is such a thing as a between lives soul regression, that means that you are ready for something like that. If it were for your highest good not to receive the map, then you would never hear about this conversation. You would never hear about the between life soul regression. Or if you did hear about it, it just wouldn't interest you.
I'm so happy you said that. It definitely is something that I've had teachers tell me before, that if I'm encountering something, it means that you are ready for it. And I imagine that law, if you will, would be true when actually dialoguing with the council of elders.
It is true. And for that reason, they will occasionally choose not to answer a particular question that somebody asks. If you ask a question and it's not for your highest good and the highest good to know the answer, they'll just remain silent. It rarely happens. It happens most frequently, though, if somebody says, when am I going to die? They generally do not answer that question, because then you will make a whole bunch of free will decisions based upon that answer. And then they have interfered with your free will, and they never do that. But except for that one question, they'll answer pretty much anything.
Now, I've heard you talk about the time that we're experiencing on the planet. I've heard mention of the year 2033. I'm curious to get your perspective on the ascension process and potential inflection points that might happen.
Yeah, so there's a wonderful book called The Age of the Heart, channeled by an Argentinian gentleman named Sebastian Blacksley. It's primarily Jesus speaking in this book, and he is the one who puts forward the year 2033. That's the year in which he says there will be an enormous leap in humanity's evolution. That's the culmination or the flashpoint for ascension. So leading up to 2033, it's very much what we have talked about, this process of light flooding the planet, darkness being made visible by the light, humanity choosing to move in another direction and let go of the darkness. And by 2033, we will be at a point where we're ready to take an evolutionary leap in consciousness. And I think that leap is something that is beyond our comprehension right now. It's my understanding it will be so profound and life altering that it's something that the human brain has no reference point for, and we really just can't comprehend it intellectually.
Wow. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, I would say
I,
so.
a lot of these other, what's coming up for me right now is a lot of these other, these books that I've encountered talk about there being kind of like a choice point where like a lot of souls will either be able to handle that new vibration or not. And it was actually something my father took his life. And when I tuned into what happened, it was part of the information that I got. and this was, in the past 6 years, was that he didn't want to be here for that shift that was happening right now. And I'm curious if there was anything related to that in this kind of like new octave that humans might be coming in or might be moving into, where a lot of people might not actually be something they want to experience, and a lot of people might leave as a result.
Well, I think there are a couple possible things going on there. One is that if somebody is choosing not to evolve, choosing to remain fear based, that's incompatible with the new earth at the higher octave after ascension. So that person would have to leave their body before it happens. But another thing that's going on with many, many people, they've made the decision at the soul level that they can best assist the ascension process from the other side. I'm not really sure how that decision is arrived at or why it's arrived at, but I do know, and the beings of light have told my wife and I many, many times, there are many, many souls choosing to leave the body because they know they can assist better from the other side.
Does part of the information that is given in these pre-birth plannings allude to what someone's functional purpose would be? So I'm thinking of all the people in the professional crowd who are like you are, where it's like, hey, I'm in a job I don't like. I know I should be doing something different. I feel like I'm playing small. Like, what am I actually going to do here with my time besides become love? Um, does that type of information get clarified as well?
It does, but perhaps not in the way that you're thinking. The important point to understand here is that every single person's biggest contribution to the ascension, to the humanity's evolution, is through your vibration, through your frequency. Your frequency is more impactful than any action you can ever take with the physical body. So people ask, how can I be of service? What should I be doing? The answer to that question might be something specific and might be something career related, but that is of secondary importance to your frequency. So you are doing by being, simply by being in a body on the planet, you're emitting your unique frequency. And that is a doing in and of itself. It's not a physical action. It's not something that you're doing through movement or through the role that you play in your career, but it's profoundly, profoundly impactful. If you never do anything other than just vibrate at your unique frequency, you are making a profound contribution to humanity's evolution and ascension. And it's really, really important to understand that.
Well, I guess there's a reason that we're called human beings instead of human doings.
That is exactly right.
I have to ask. So it sounds like your wife has been on this ascension path as well as a channeler. Was that a thing before you had your own personal shift?
No, that my personal shift was years before she started channeling. The background here is that when my wife and I met, which was now about 14 years ago, she had very severe OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, to the point that it was debilitating. And we never foresaw that she would be a channel or actually that she would work at all. We didn't think that she would be able to do that. And then over the years, she got a handle on the OCD and really, really worked through it and raised her own vibration. And that allowed her to come into contact with these non physical beings that she channels today. And at first, she didn't really know what was going on. She was just hearing these words in her mind. And she started to write them down on index cards. And then one day she showed them to me. And I recognized immediately this was channeled material. And I said, this is really good. Can I put this in my newsletter? And she said, oh, I don't know. But she finally agreed to that. And then it just grew from there. And she started co-teaching the workshops with me. And now we do everything together as full partners in our work. And it's just been amazing, but totally unforeseen.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think like that wasn't an accident, right? You guys had a plan to connect and grow in this way together, and it's beautiful to see that happened.
Yeah, well, we know that that is true. And, if we had full remembrance of the pre birth plan, then we would have known in advance that she was going to master the OCD and become a channel. But like everybody else, we're behind the veil. We don't have full memory of our pre-birth plans. And so it came as a wonderful surprise to us.
A couple traditions that I've studied do talk about this notion that we come in with all of our gifts, all the wisdom that we've gained across all lifetimes, and then as we evolve, like that stuff kind of comes into our awareness. Is that congruent? I guess the question I'm asking is like, how can people think about accessing that?
You access it through your vibration. The more you raise your vibration, the more you will be able to tap into all the wisdom that you've accumulated from all of your previous incarnations and experiences. It's encoded in your DNA, as I understand it. How it gets encoded in your DNA is far, far beyond anything that our science currently understands, but it's in there. It's dormant, but it can be activated as you raise your vibration. It's waiting for you to raise your vibration, and that's actually part of the pre-birth planning.
That seems to be what I've heard is also what's happening on the planet right now is the vibrational shift that's occurring because of all these people, but also because there seems to be some type of divine intervention is actually turning on the DNA of people at a level that's unprecedented.
Yeah, I believe that that is exactly what is happening. And you talk about divine intervention. I believe that that's what is happening as well. Humanity got itself into a really difficult place. And there's been so much suffering and such an outcry from humanity to the universe, a plea for help, basically. And that plea for help has been answered and is being answered. And then people say, well, if God or the universe is helping us, why is there still so much suffering in the world? And I think the answer to that is that the help is coming in a very gentle, very tender manner. In other words, if the ascension just took place instantly right now, you would find yourself at a much higher vibration in which you were just surrounded by a lot of what would appear to you to be blinding white light. And that would not be a pleasant experience. You would think quite reasonably that one of two things had happened, that you had gone blind or that you had gone insane. So we're just not ready to handle that kind of a leap right now, all at once. So it's being done very tenderly, very gently.
I have some experience with, part of my journey was my Kundalini awakening process started, and I realized through that my body wasn't ready to handle certain amounts of energy that I was experiencing, and it was actually, and I'm still experiencing it, but just years of suffering because of that, because I kind of like overstretched myself, um, and uh, and so I have a deep reverence with the pace of things at this point because I've seen what can happen when you kind of take on more than you're ready to handle.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to understand. There are a lot of different ways that people can create Kundalini awakenings and other sorts of, quote unquote, energetic breakthroughs. But just because you can create that, that doesn't mean that you're ready for it. And being ready is vitally important.
So, Rob, what are you exploring right now? Like, is there anything new or exciting that's generally piquing your curiosity and yeah, it just makes you feel really excited?
Well, I'm very much on a non-dual path right now. If somebody hasn't heard that term before, non-dual means not two, which is a reference to the fact that there's only one being and really only one substance in the entire universe. And that one being is all of us. We're just individualized, you could say, blooms of the one being. And so on the non-dual path, there's a lot of meditation focused on pure awareness, the experience of pure awareness as the one being. And we work with certain tools like self inquiry, contemplation, things like that, that are intended to essentially shift the identity from body, mind, personality to the one being. That's what's really exciting to me right now.
Nice. And it sounds like some of the direct experiences that you've had have been directly aligned to that path.
That seems to be my soul's MO in this lifetime. You know, when I was supposed to go from the corporate world to doing the research on not on pre-birth planning, I had that experience walking down the street that I told you about, and that shifted me in that direction. And then years later, when it was time to go on to the non-dual path, I had that non-dual experience I told you about, and it put me on that path. There are these major inflection points where my soul creates an experience in order to redirect me. And I'm very grateful for that because I'm not sure that I could have redirected myself in that way without those experiences.
It is a question that comes up for me as you say that, is that, my teacher will often say to me, like, oh yeah, your true self is like organizing things so that, you experience this or experience that. And it questions, like, how is each of us having our own individual movie organized by our soul, or is there a collective happening that our soul is playing a part of, or is it both? And do you know what I'm trying to say here? Like, how is it could be that your soul is the one that's organizing these things? Like, what is actually the mechanics of that?
I think it's both and. I think both of those things are happening, and I have no way to explain conceptually how that could be. I think the human mind is so limited as a faculty, and it's all of its understandings are conceptual, and concepts are distortions of reality. They aren't realities in and of themselves, they're distortions of realities. And all of the mind's inputs are coming from the five senses for the most part in the average person. The five senses are bringing in only a tiny sliver of what is actually out there. So you're dealing with concepts, you're dealing with a tiny sliver of information. It would be like trying to explain human life to a goldfish. How would you tell a goldfish what it's like to drive a car? The goldfish has no frame of reference for understanding that. And I think by the same token, we have no frame of reference for understanding how it can be both and, as you just described it. The universe is so far beyond the understanding of the human brain, and that's a humbling thing. And I think that humility is a good thing, and we just need to rest there until this lifetime is over, and then we'll have a more expanded understanding.
Well, I look forward to learning more about that at some point in my existence.
I do too.
Well, Rob, this has been awesome. I know there's probably people that are eager to dig in here and to, I definitely recommend your books. Your Soul's Plan had a big impact on me. But also, I know you do some live experiences, some group stuff. And I think it would be great for people to hear where they can learn more.
Yeah, just go to the website, which is yoursoulsplan.com. If you click on events in the main menu, you'll see the upcoming workshops. There's a group Between Lives Soul Regression on October 26th, another one on, I believe, December 7th. And we do these every 2 or 3 or 4 months, so on an ongoing basis. If you want to do it as a private session, click on Sessions in the main menu. On that page, you can actually see a 1-hour video of a Between Lives regression. So you can see exactly what happens. My wife's channelings are on the channeling page. Take a look at those. Most of them are publicly available. There's a lot of good information on the website.
Awesome. Well, we'll link all that up for the listeners so that it's easy to find in the show notes. And thanks again, Rob. I really appreciate your work and loved learning from you today.
You're welcome. A pleasure talking to you.